Okay, good evening. This is Tuesday, March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And this is the Opioid Settlement Fund Advisory Committee meeting. I want to announce that under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, this meeting is being recorded. I'd like to start off by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so just a announcement that there are two other members of the committee who are en route coming from jobs. So I may be changing the format of the agenda just to accommodate their late arrival. So I think the first thing we can start with is the approval of the minutes from January 20th. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look those over when I sent them for the last meeting. And if I'd like a motion to approve if there's no changes.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so the January 20th, 2026 minutes have been approved. The next thing on the agenda was to have Valerie speak about the settlement fund spending plan that she was trying to devise for us so we would know how to proceed with how much are we going to spend, are we going to have limits? So she is en route, so we'll wait to have her do her presentation. The next thing on the agenda is me, so I'm here. So the next thing on the agenda is member updates and reports. So I think I'd like to talk about, the first thing I have on the agenda is the meeting on March 12th with the town administrator, Chris Vitale, regarding the RFP. And the issue, David and I both met with Chris Vitale. And the issue was grant versus procurement. So we did a lot of work, talking about the changes that would need to be made to the RFP so that he would be comfortable posting it. So I still have some work to do on it. But David, can you address what you thought about the meeting and where we are now with that?
There are a lot of impediments to getting this finished, and the details are in the details. I don't know how we'll come up with something that's really acceptable to Chris. I hope he can make suggestions that you can incorporate that would make it reasonable. I think that some of the additions that he made were inappropriate. For instance, he wanted attachment C to be a meeting of the board of directors of any organization that is applying for money. And I think, for example, attachment C should be deleted. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't from his submission.
Meeting with representatives, period.
Exactly.
I don't know of any funder that has to meet with the entire board.
Exactly. But that was just an example of one of the numerous impediments that were injected into the RFP. So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done to get that moving along.
And I'm working on it. Chris Vitale had reviewed the RFP and put all these suggestions and sent it to me, the suggestions he made, so I can fix it. And I'm going to work with him around the wording so that we can get it posted. There, as David said, there's a lot of details. There's a lot of details that I was glad that we were able to meet with him, to talk with him about our concerns. And so one of the other things that was evident was he was focusing on a procurement of funds. And our focus was on grants. And so I gave everyone the guidance for municipalities on opioid abatement funds and Chapter 30B, so everybody can look at that. Because in Chapter 30B, in the opioid abatement funds, it gives us a little bit more flexibility on how that money is distributed with less, I don't want to say less restriction, but different kinds of restriction. So I'd like everybody on the committee to take a look at it, to understand it, because part of the changes that I'll be working on with Mr. Vitale are around this, changing it from a procurement, which is what he was perceiving it as versus a grant. And part of what I did was I did meet, I met with, who else did I meet with? The representative from the Mass Association of Health Boards and someone from RISE. And the person from the Mass Association of Health Boards is the one who really focused on the 30B with me in the meeting and how to work with Chris around and have him review that so that we can then proceed from using this instead of a really formal procurement of funds. Anything else?
Yeah, at the beginning of our meeting, he said that he was uncomfortable with the term RFP,
Right.
right? I'm not uncomfortable with the term RFP, and we've been using it since the beginning of this committee. However, to accommodate his lack of comfort, we could call it an RFA, which is something that granting agencies also use, request for applications.
Okay.
So if by changing one letter, that increases his comfort level, you might run that by him. I mean, certainly, I don't think it makes a difference to our potential applicants, whether there's a P or an A there.
Right.
But if that takes it out of the procurement dimension for him, then that might be an improvement.
Yeah. And
Just an idea.
And I think that's a great idea. One of the things that Chris emphasized was that because we're an advisory committee and this RFP or RFA goes through, he's responsible for it. Because we're an advisory committee, so we don't have control of the funds, we don't have control of anything that's, the process, so that he wants to feel comfortable, and I see it's important for him to feel comfortable with the wording and it going out, because he's going to be responsible for it.
Jim was sort of uncomfortable with those aspects of it too. I mean, Jim, I remember correctly, we had the same sort of pushback with Jim. Not nearly as fresh as we're dealing with a whole new entity with Chris. He's only 2 months, well, 2.5 months in the job.
Right.
But, yeah, there was some tension between how we envision the process and how we envision the process.
Excuse me, guys, I'm being distracted by how loud you are. Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, that, I heard him when he said, it's on me. And that for him to feel comfortable with what is presented and put out there I think is as important. But now that he understands that we want to put it in as a grant, that eases some things up. So I will continue to work with him on this, because my goal was to have something out there by June. So hopefully I'll be able to get everything done and we can get him to feel comfortable to post it. Now, along with that, is one of the things he recommended was that we hire a program manager. And I just wanted some discussion about that for the committee, because they're still left with who is going to manage it once it comes in. And it certainly, it has been recommended by both RISE and the state that it is okay to hire somebody to manage the funds and the programs that may occur in town. So I just wanted to get people to talk about what their thoughts are on that.
It might be better to have a consultant, well, two ways I would consider going. Hire a consultant that does this for a living, can do it. Their hourly rate's gonna be higher, but we're not gonna be stuck with the whole bill for a full-time salary and their benefits. The second thing is there another department that is regularly involved with procurement? Schools
Yes.
looking at you.
Yes.
And I'm thinking also maybe the police or health department.
Yeah.
But there are departments that routinely write grants. And we might want to buy a portion of someone's time who's good at this. They know what do you call it, the environment for doing this. So that we're not having, because if we just went with a full-time person doing this, we either get somebody very inexperienced, and we'd blow a significant portion of our budget.
Well, I think one of the discussions, though, is do we need a full-time person, or do we need somebody for so many hours a week? And that's one of the things Chris wanted us to talk about, Mr. Vitale wanted us to talk about, is what do we think we need? And then go from there. So do we need somebody who works 8 hours a week? Do we want somebody who works 16 hours a week? And then do some planning, because if we're gonna be asking, and he would post that, that we really need to know what it is the committee thinks.
Should we be talking about how many hours total?
Yeah,
Because this is gonna be, if we're gonna be proposal-driven, we're not unless I get this wrong, we're gonna be soliciting proposals in cycles. And we probably aren't gonna have a continuous rolling application process. Correct?
I don't know.
I mean, I would also need to know more about what we expect in that program manager position. I mean, before I can say how many hours, like,
Yeah.
if we can sort of outline the duties of that person.
You may wanna have a subcommittee or a working group.
Is anybody interested in working on that?
I can do this because I did this for a living, that's why you put me on this committee.
Is that why? I didn't put you on the committee. I asked you if you would be on the committee.
Yes.
And you agreed. Isn't that the position we were talking about, that we wanted Ollie to possibly do 2 days a week, or,
So
I mean, all of
that may not be able to happen. And it's a little bit more complicated because of the fact that she's already working. Even if she cut back her hours, there may be some need for competitive people applying for it. So it's not as easy as doing that. And the other part of that is Olive will be much more expensive. Even if we hired, for example, someone who's a social worker, it's probably not going to be as costly as it will be for Olive. So we do have to consider that. I love Olive. I think Olive is perfect to do this, but we have to look at the reality of how much money we have and how much money we're going to get and how long we want it to last, right, to meet the goals that the community describes that they would like to have happen. So it's, for example, I've met with Dartmouth, which is what Chris Vitale suggested, that we contract, do an intermunicipal contract, because they already have somebody there doing that full-time. In fact, I saw her today at this conference. And she already is doing this, so she would know how to do it. And then how many hours would we want her for? If she was gonna manage the financial piece, but she was also gonna be, and my feeling is, I just don't want somebody to manage a project. I want somebody to also be somebody who interfaces in the community. I think we need that. I think we need a face, because we need somebody who's going to go to departments. We need somebody who's going to interact with agencies outside of here. I've made a lot of contacts today at this conference I went to, but I want somebody who's going to do that. That it's not going to rely on me to keep a record of all these contacts and be the bridge. I talked a lot about bridging before in this committee. How do we bridge to services that are already available? So again, we have to decide what we want. So our job is to advise the select board of what we want and what we think would be the most effective to manage the funds, but also to provide service in town. I don't want somebody who's just going to fill in the paperwork. Yes, David?
I want to agree with Craig's idea that we should get someone who can do hourly work for us. If you think that we're going to, let's say, entertain 3 cycles a year, which is reasonable, 3 cycles of submissions a year, each submission cycle would probably require no more than a week of full-time employment. So we're talking 120 hours a year for 3 cycles, and then whatever maintenance there would be paltry, would be several hours. So aside from the interface with the community, which I happen to think would be mission creep, I don't think it's within the purview, should be within the purview of what we do. But by hiring someone on a part-time basis who is capable of doing this, if we could find a consultant, and there are people who write grants for a living, I think that would be a good mission. And that may be the shortest path to solving the problem.
Could also divide responsibilities between the staff and the committee to do site visits in between grant cycles or interviews with applicants. So you're not in the apply, get accepted or rejected cycle, but there's sort of an intermediary role that's more structured than having, because what you're describing, Donna, is sort of like the project manager, and I don't think we have the money to have a project manager and the projects that we're funding. I mean, because what you're talking about is outreach and communications, and I think that's part of our job too. And we can do it piecemeal. You got 9 people on the committee, you don't have to have 9 people going out and doing outreach and site visits. You divide it up. And you have that consultant be the one that provides you a little bit of structure. Gives you questions to ask, so we're asking all the same questions when we meet with organizations, or at least the same type of questions. There's obviously, did you achieve fill in the blank? And then you give them their objectives. Or how is it going towards achieving your fill in the blank objectives?
Okay, how about others?
I think what you're describing, what Craig's describing makes sense, but I think I am worried that what you're describing, that's actually a service in and of itself. It's almost like somebody could come up with that idea about being in the community. And maybe what we're looking for is that to use those funds to support that. That might be a separate discussion. Where you're mentioning this idea of coordinating, being facing the community. I mean, I'm just thinking, is that not someone who's just managing the grant, but is that what the community needs? And is that a proposal that we could look for, whether that person is housed, wherever that person is housed? I'm just trying to get, understand it from your perspective first, what you were envisioning.
if we are able to get someone who comes in and does education in the community, do they build relationship in the community that allows more engagement? And I think part of my concern is in getting people engaged, and then how do we do it if we have a face, a person who is out in the community, who people get to recognize and connect with? Will that make a difference as opposed to hiring a consultant to come and just manage the paperwork? So, I mean, I haven't, what I have envisioned sounds like that there is an agreement for that. So I think what we have to do is decide, and Craig, you're willing to look at what do we need, doing the description of what the person would be doing, and then giving that along with, or we can do that before we even have the RFP out, but then making the recommendation to the select board, to Chris, to go ahead and hire somebody. But we have to decide how many hours we would be willing to pay for, and Val's gonna talk about her budget ideas. But how many hours would we need the person? What would be their job description? And then we can figure out how much money we would want to allot for that.
And if it's a consultant, it's not a job description, it's a scope of services.
Okay. So are you willing to work on that and come back at the next meeting with something for the committee, or?
I know what we're moving towards.
Well, would it?
Because as a member of the committee, I can't decide which approach we're going to take, because we're contemplating two very different approaches. It's how we do it that we can sort of look at the options, and one or two of us can pull it together. But in terms of, are we looking for somebody to have a job being the opioid settlement funds coordinator? Or are we looking for someone to be the opioid settlement funds grant manager? And that's different. And I've always thought of the administrative position being a grant manager, and that the services were being provided, including the outreach, by the people that we're contracting. To a lesser extent, the committee, because we should be the ambassadors for the funds and be prepared to do a site visit or do an outreach event. And then, you know, for those that represent different town departments, maybe we can get some resources from those entities or agencies that we fund, some people in their agencies that do that as part of their mission, but aren't necessarily the point people on our grant. They're just part of the grant. You don't sound convinced, though. Look convinced.
No,
I'm saying
I'm just trying to digest what you're saying.
so. Okay.
David?
Related to what Craig's bringing up, I mean, there are companies that specialize in consulting to nonprofit organizations for grant writing and grant management. There are a lot of them in Massachusetts. I don't know if there's one locally. We prefer to work with someone local, but we could consider outsourcing all of our management to a consulting company who would, you know, probably have one person assigned to that. And it might turn out to be cost effective. It would definitely be outsourced, but it would get the job done. And depending on the financial aspects of it, that might be the shortest route. But there's a profusion of people out there who consult to nonprofit organizations, and we're basically a nonprofit organization. Small, but, you know, that's what we do. So that's just another shortcut.
Pam, do you have any thoughts?
No, I'm still wondering who the contact person would be if somebody from the town had questions about, you know, money available and things like that. Who would they call? If we just had a consultant company, you know, and not somebody, like you said, that is reachable.
Well, Bob, I'm going to pick on you, Bob. Bob does this for the Affordable Housing Trust. Is that a care? So we have RFPs, we have things that need to be done, and what we do as a committee is we guarantee that so many hours every Wednesday, Bob is available. So you have office hours, right, Bob? And he becomes the point person. There are other people, you know, we have the other person that we pay, Leonardi, that may be sort of the technical consultant on certain types. He's an architect in terms of land use and things like that. And then the committee we're sort of like behind the curtain making these decisions, and we do site visits when we're trying to make a decision. But I don't want to overstretch that analogy. Functionally, I think we have a structure, but I think you get into the detail, we're very different. My other they, we, is very different than this we, in terms of what we're gonna be doing. But, I mean, and that's, I mean, and I don't even know that the hours or the analogy is perfect, but you can do it here. You can have somebody that's, you know, are they based at the Board of Health? Or the school department? And then there's an extension and a telephone number or an email address that they may not be reachable on every day at a certain time, but they're on top of it, and the public can write and/or leave messages. I think that's a big concern. If you are doing something, you don't want to have this, you know, the man behind the curtains, so to speak.
I think it would have to be through the select board. The select board is managing, is controlling the funds.
Yeah.
So it would have to be somewhere here. And the phone number would have to be here.
Here
And
being town hall.
town hall. It would all have to filter through the town hall because, again, we're an advisory committee.
Right.
So, so I think, you know, to answer Pam's question, it is, for me, not ideal not to have a face behind the opioid funds that people in the community would be able to connect with. Coming to the town hall is just another thing, or being able to call and say, I have a question. It's another thing to have a person out there in the community that somebody might be able to connect with and feel comfortable sharing with, feel safe with, especially if they're struggling with addiction and they want to get some support, but just having a consultant isn't going to afford that. Now, maybe there will be programs that'll provide that, but again, they're not Westport people who are going to be regularly in Westport.
So Donna, are you really kind of talking about like having almost like a town social worker, right? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have one in Westport.
No.
Right, okay. So is that,
So, and also.
or a piece of that, what you're
So,
talking
The
about?
police are not here tonight. Chief Dunn couldn't be here tonight. But they had a program where they had a social worker that would go out with them to do post-overdose. So I almost think that wouldn't it be great if we had a part-time social worker in town who could be available and have office hours, who could manage the administrative stuff, who could go out to the school and maybe provide something or provide some education in the community. It's almost, I guess my vision was having a person, a face of the opioid settlement funds that people could connect with and know who they could connect with, and it would be consistent. And then that person would work within the community at large. So yeah, that's kind of what I had
Okay,
in mind.
okay, yeah, well, that's helpful, yeah.
Donna, oh,
Val, hi. You're very shamrocky today.
I'm kind of all kinds of
Are you a
pride.
little Irish?
You get the most seasonally appropriate, as opposed to those of us who were very
Green per
conservative.
capita.
That's all I got.
Very festive today.
I have nothing. My wife is the big.
We're more festive than the rest of us.
The Adamsville St. Patty's Day
Oh, okay.
parade, so we went all out this year. I love and agree with your vision, Donna. However, the thing that changed for me was doing the budget exercise.
Okay.
And not in thinking that that's a good idea, but in my opinion of what we can afford.
Okay.
In the sense of, I mean, it's sort of all for discussion, but it was sort of, you know, somehow I sort of thought what was coming in would pace itself out differently. And certainly the fact that we have 300,000 now is sort of misleading because it's cumulatively accumulated.
I think it's like 380.
317.
No, it's like 381 now.
Okay, so maybe I didn't include FY '27, and so it's the 384 number?
Yeah, and also, just if, for people to be aware that there is a new, what do they call this?
Disbursement?
No, dashboard.
Oh, dashboard.
For
Brand
the
new, yeah.
average,
Yeah, I think I
person,
pulled
that they
from
can
it.
go on and see how the money is being spent.
Yeah.
So Governor Healy just set up that dashboard for the general public, so they can see in their towns where the money's going, what other towns where they may be spending.
The other thing is, I did read Val's handout, I don't have it in front of me,
Oh, I have copies.
but depending upon the approach we take, it could radically affect the way we approach
Right.
the funding.
That's why I kind of wanted to talk about that first before
Yeah,
we
I'm
got into
sorry, I
That's okay.
apologize.
No, you're
Okay.
here.
We understand.
I had a question. Now, the program that was being run by Detective Donovan involved a social worker, and they've lost funding for that. So
Yes.
that position has been terminated,
Yes,
and so she's no longer making those visits.
no,
And so the social worker who did that is no longer employed by the department?
She was never employed.
She was part of another, sort of a cooperative among a few towns and
Okay.
employed by another town.
Okay,
Right.
but along the lines of what you were suggesting, if the police department wanted to reinstitute this program,
yeah,
Yeah,
it wouldn't be a supplementation anymore. It would be a new program.
right,
you're absolutely right.
And they could design the position of that social worker to do what you want to do.
yes.
At least minimally. Perhaps not the management part, but the
But-
community education and outreach component.
But if it's a new position, they could propose, the Chief Dunn could do that, maybe with help with Chris and you, put together a proposal to hire someone where the police department would, some of the salary support would come from that part of the budget, but then some of that would come from the opioid settlement funds, and that would, I think, be allowable. And furthermore, if Detective Donovan's work could be compartmentalized, because I think she was already compartmentalized for that.
Yeah, this was an overtime place.
And-
It was all overtime.
And, I mean, from my point of view, that would be one of the best ways to spend this money. But it would require them, concocting this proposal. But I think that that's something that might be allowable, and it would be filling a gap, but it would be filling a gap in an allowable way.
So she was in a full-time position, and the money for this particular position was being paid out of another pocket
It was a grant.
grant.
They lost, the grant is done, and the way it was shared, I don't remember if it was Rehoboth or
Seacom?
somewhere out there, they had the grant, and then they shared the grant with the communities, and Westport was one, and so Westport only had the social worker one day a week. So part of, if we were looking at intermunicipal use of funds to save money and to be able to say to Dartmouth, do you want to share a position? And 2 days a week she's there, 2 days a week she's here, and the other day she does all the administrative stuff. That kind of thing. For me, there is no place in Westport to go. There is no person, nothing to identify for people who are struggling with addiction in Westport. And to always, just to contract everything out without having a face contact here in Westport, I think we're gonna be missing something really important.
I agree.
I don't disagree, but why don't we hire somebody, why don't we pay someone to have a Westport outreach worker? On a paid,
I mean, that could be
Yeah,
something
we
if
can
we
do-
adjust the RFP and say we're specifically, you know, interested in programs that would do
dedicate
big,
staff
big, big.
resources to this community.
So on that note, the conference I went to today, I saw Stephanie Perry. You remember Stephanie Perry? She came and spoke
She's a
to
nurse,
us.
yeah.
She's a nurse, and she works for South Coast, and she just hired someone, and she goes, you could do something where you contract out with South Coast Hospital, and they have a person that comes here once a week and
And they
does
got-
work here once a
They
week.
got the third-party capability too.
So, those are options. But I think to separate out, if we just want somebody to manage the money, the funds, I think, to me, that's money not well spent. Just to
Do we
manage the
know, is it
funds.
still, I missed your update, so I apologize, but is there anyone in town sort of assigned to that as part of their job? Like, or is
No.
it still falling through the cracks?
It's gonna fall through the cracks.
You
That's
still-
why,
You still need to hire somebody, or to pay somebody,
Right.
or to contract with somebody to make that part of what they do.
right. So, and Chris said, his recommendation was, his idea was to hire a program manager, and he also still suggested an intermunicipal contract with Dartmouth to have Rachel do it, but he said he would go through the administrator, not through Rachel. Rachel's hired by the town, and to see if that would be something that the town administrator would want to do. I will tell you that right now, I like Rachel very much. She is working with Olive on doing a conference in May for Mental Health Awareness Month focused on substance use disorders. And so I brought them together, and they're gonna we're collaborating on like a day event, with giveaways and to bring people in. So that's happening, but she's doing it for Dartmouth, we're doing it for Westport, and Olive is helping me because that's one of the things that she can do, and bring in the collaborative to see if the collaborative wants to participate, so. But again, just having somebody just manage the funds with no interface is not ideal for me, but the committee will make a decision about that altogether. It's not my decision, it's our decision. And it's our decision to present to the select board for them to make the decision, so.
Right, couple steps here.
And am I mistaken when I say, I thought we talked about the select board handing over the funds to be controlled by the,
I would
Health
not,
department.
I don't believe that's gonna happen.
That was before the new administrator came
Yeah.
and.
And the
That
new
was
ad-
Jim Hartnett's.
Yeah.
that was his idea.
Yes, but we weren't getting anywhere with that either. So, and I think that Chris Vitale would like to do the intermunicipal arrangement, which I'm not opposed to, but I don't know what it's gonna cost, I don't know, but he needs to know, Chris Vitale needs to know how many hours we would need this person, and what the expectations are. And then he would present that to select board, and he could move forward with it. So is that something you're willing to work on, Craig?
Not until we make decisions on where is the money coming, how much we're gonna spend, and how we're gonna spend it in a high-level way.
All right, so Val, do you want to talk about your
Sure,
numbers?
sure.
That might help us.
Sure.
Yes, that was my,
Yes, and I apologize again for not being able to be here to do that in the sequence that the chair had planned.
That's okay.
And I don't have a recommendation of these options. I'm really laying out scenarios. I think they did have different pros and cons to just give you a sense of the scale. This was based on the dashboard online, the mass.gov municipal opioid abatement funds lookup tool from 1/20/26. So it should be accurate. It might be sort of a fiscal year off in terms of, I didn't know, like, starting in this fiscal year, 26, when that 66,955 comes or came, and it's based on what you said, Don, it sounds like it already came. So these might all kind of shift back one. So, so that might need attention, but so this is considered a rough estimate.
Why do the amounts vary? Is that the formula set by?
I think that's the formula. And also, there are a number of different entities that were sued, and so the payments from different entities come at different times. So it's also, Purdue, well, I don't think Purdue was one, but CVS was responsible for X, this
Walgreens.
manufacturer, Walgreens responsible for Y.
Got it.
I don't know if we've seen the Purdue money yet, so.
I don't
but-
think so, actually. The chart lays out each entity and, what's coming from it, but I won't go there now. But, so again, this is worth a fine-tune
Okay.
tweak and adjustment. I think just adjustment of the fiscal years. The amounts are all right, but the distribution,
Got it.
we might have a little more within this fiscal year, and rather than looking at FY '40. So, so starting with scenario 1, 2, and 3 are really the ones to look at. The first scenario 1 is based on just sort of what do we have that year. Although I don't understand, there's obviously an error in the one that says 963,000, so ignore that one. It's going to look more like the ones around it. It's going to be like 36,000. So, right, so this starts with, we have accumulated years of not spending. I guess it's without spending exactly what we have, but sort of roughly what we have that year. I did something funky with the first two. A couple of these are, I can see, wrong, so I'm not sure. Okay, so let's ignore scenario 1 for now.
Yeah.
It's not accurate. Scenario 2 is just taking the total and equally dividing it among all the years. I didn't totally pay attention to, in some years, that may, will that actually be the amount we have on hand since the annual distribution differs? So that's worth a second look, but just for an exercise in understanding what the chunks are we're talking about.
So in scenario 2, you're talking about the 98,000?
Scenario 2 is 98,000 a year. So
Yeah, a
that's
year.
dividing up the total, So the total we've gotten is 105,982,744. Some of it has been spent, so the total to spend remaining as of what was on this chart is $1,377,619.50. So dividing that equally from FY '26, the current year, through FY '39 gets you 98,400. And then scenario 3 looked at, often multi-year grants. You start maybe big to invest in some new things, get them going, and then start doing less over time with the idea that the entities you're funding over time know the funding is reducing and they find other sources of funding, or there's a phasing down process. So this scenario 3 is a phasing down process. I guess scenario 1 is messed up, but maybe that subconsciously reflects, like, to me, that's the most random one and not strategic. It's just like, okay, what do we have in the pot this year? So there's no good strategy there. So there are other ways to do this, but scenario 2 and 3 represent, you could do a quasi-equal distribution or a more intensive gradation. But this is one of the things I've been wanting to see for a while, to give us a sense of, like, if we're giving, how many things can we fund at how much? Kind of depending how much you want to get, as we can prioritize, like, if we do police and schools for a chunk, what does that leave? Not a ton, so we can do kind of 3 things maybe, or, unless we do a few little things. But I just think it's helpful to talk about it in that way, especially as we're talking about prioritizing municipal initiatives, the police, the schools, and, we know we're interested in potentially STAR doing something, or potentially it's an outreach and education. So this gives us a little more clear sense of what we're dealing with and how to potentially sharpen our priorities and allocate. So as I said, I recommend 2 versus 3. I recommend we pick something that helps us plan well and then be somewhat flexible about it, that it's not a code of law that we can't spend over 98,000 one year or less the next. But it's basically for budgeting purposes.
I mean, when I look at this, and I'm thinking about the management of all, because we're not this huge nonprofit that we have all these people that are going to manage this grant.
Accountants to, yeah.
Yeah, right, we don't have that, right? We'd have to sort of borrow, but in scenario 2, if you look at scenario 2, if, those numbers are looking at like a social work position for those many years, that could possibly get divided among the constituents, right? Like I get, the school department gets 20%, the police, whatever it is. And that person could, in the meantime, because it's longevity, it's not, I mean, the grants that I get from DESI's, I'm lucky if I get a 2-year grant, right? There's fairly longevity here in terms of planning, although we might have to bump up like salary for cost of living increases and work off of that. But if that gets then to the town organizations in some sort of distribution that this committee recommends, that would kind of cover it. And it's just, who would this person report to? That's kind of how you would need to, whether it's Department of Health, whether there's a joint evaluation committee, because I can certainly tell you, and I imagine the police and the fire are the same way, we are just inundated with kids struggling with mental health issues, and whose parents are, have mental health issues, whether they have addiction issues or not. So it is, if you probably, I mean, certainly from the school department, and I'm speaking to my high school principal, if I ask, what is the number one issue that we're having right now? It is the mental health issues. So if there was a dedicated Westport person for this, it might be more generative than, let's try this pilot project for 2 years, and then let's wean them off, and then we're going to try some other pilot project. If there's not a steady funding source, even if those projects are great, they're going to go away. And so scenario 2 looks like the most stable to me.
Okay. Yes, David?
Since we don't know who's going to apply for funds in the town, I think we should actually put this off until we receive some proposals, because there may be only 6 or 7 applications. And some of those applications might be one-off. Some of those applications might envision continual funding. And certainly, we can wait until we have an idea of what's out there that's going to request funding. I have a feeling that we're not going to be inundated with applications. That's just my guess. And we've identified some of the places that will ask for funds. But I think how we apportion the funds depends on what we think is going to be out there. I mean, it's very different than other granting agencies when they know they're going to have 10 applications for every funded grant. We don't know. We may not get very many. And some of them may be very small. But we're going to have to make qualitative judgments about whether we think they're good applications or not, and whether we want to, support them. So I think that it's premature to set a limit right now. I mean, we might set a limit on what they can ask for, but I don't think we should determine what the pool is before we see what the request is.
I mean, I think it's always good to signal to grantees, again, sort of like you said, we are planning, and we could even do approximately, and give ourselves, like I said, I think we should definitely give ourselves the flexibility to adapt but, we also have to take into account if we're paying someone to manage the grant, what is that? So lop that off, I don't know what that is,
Well,
but,
and I think that's one of the things that we would have to say, okay, then what a percentage do we want to pay for administrative cost?
right, so that's.
So
one
what
question.
percentage of $98,400 would we want to go towards administrative costs?
But let's say that is a question that needs to be answered, absolutely. But for the purposes of just discussion, we could say, we are, planning to distribute 90,000 a year, but we are open to proposals, between X and Y amounts, and, if you have something for more, talk to us, or, whatever, so that there's an opportunity to do that, but we're kind of giving it lets people know where in the ballpark they are.
You could do sort of a 3A, which is start with a higher number in the first year,
Yep,
set up this process.
yep, or something like that.
And then sort of go back into a level funding process when you figure out what's the best way to apportion it.
Well, you're talking about scenario 3 then?
Or maybe a variation sort of between the
That's why I said
two?
3A, yeah.
Yeah, 3A, okay, that's, yeah.
With it might come over time, you may be better off, to Fran's point, having something people said, okay, this is, we can make a multi-year plan to do this, and if we are successful, then we have 5 years, or we have 3 years to, and maybe you have to submit applications every year, but you're doing it with a 5-year vision and knowing that we are going to, prioritize that, let's put it that way. And then, but there's setup, and I think realistically, you're spending, Donna, an awful amount of time in this.
I am, and I'm feeling tired.
Yeah, so I hear it.
I have another meeting on Thursday.
So, so that's gonna, this part of that time is gonna be probably absorbed by, other members of the committee, A, and B, by some of the people that we will contract with, or organizations or departments that we contract with to deal with this. And then but I think this provides us a great template to visualize. If we go in this direction, what's the implication cost-wise going down the road? Or do we want to be, a little bit, have more of a steadier flow of. And then the other thing is, if we have a good enough program, although I think we're always going to be at a disadvantage as a small community, there's going to be some, there is competitive state money, and
Right,
there's going to be
and-
more
right.
state money.
Right.
And then doing collaborative efforts with other towns may not come at the expense of our grant in the long run, but I went to a workshop about a year ago at the State House, and with the people that administer this program on a statewide basis. And it's clear that they're looking for, A, collaboration among communities, and B, and they actually get more money than the rest of the Commonwealth does collectively. There's more money, as you know, sitting at the state level than there is in the 365 communities.
Right. And that's what the collaborative is about, that we share some resources with other communities, and that's what Matt Armendo is directing.
Yeah.
So, and Olive is the coordinator between the different municipalities. But it's still, so if we went with, say, scenario 3, and then we can build connecting and getting grants, I also envision the person who's doing the administrative stuff to be able to reach out and get grants.
Yeah.
So for example, RISE, they have money, but then you have to present a proposal to them to get the money. And so that's also what I'm thinking. I'm not just thinking about this person's just going to say, okay, we've spent this much, and then do the report. That will get more complicated as we have programs. But but this person is going to be actively trying to seek out more funds to back up what we're doing, so we could go longer.
Or deeper, or both.
I will make the risk of comparing us to the Affordable Housing Trust again. Those types of operational, both on a quasi-programmatic size and an administrative size, it's what, 40,000 a year, Bob?
The administration part?
Yeah.
And what
But that's-
percentage of
is that
the whole
full-time?
budget is that?
10%?
Is that full-time?
No,
all part-time consultants.
they're
So-
both part-time consultants. What do we have for an annual budget? About 300,000?
Well,
Now, by the way,
not annual.
what,
I mean, annual budget is really 98,000.
by the way, we're working with CPC funds, and that 300,000 includes 200,000 that we're aggregating over time to do a land acquisition for, that could accommodate up to 30 units of housing. So that's a whole different scenario, but the administrative piece of it, which is the continuity and the analysis and the contact with the public and stuff like that, that's what it's costing. And I don't want to beat that one because I may be overdoing the analogy.
And so
The governors-
Ask your collaborative members how who they've hired.
Some of them have just given lump sum to different organizations. They kept it simple. I'm trying to think if it was Freetown, I don't remember which town it is, but there's a person in town who's a minister, but he has a whole program for substance use disorder.
And I spent the day with him yesterday.
Right, and Olive went to see him, and she said she was really actually impressed about what he's able to accomplish. But that town doesn't have a lot of money. I don't know if they just get.
9,000 a year.
Yeah, so they just gave him the 9,000 because he was the entity in town, and it was to help expand his program, but,
So, and just going back to what you were saying before, Donna, I'm with you now about having this one ingrained person, because this issue impacts, it's so widespread, right? It's, that I would hate to see us have just one program that's able to target a smaller group, right? So I like the idea of, and we're already, we're trying to do some work on this. I'm sure the police are trying to do something. I want to go back to having a town person that can both support the coordination, who's embedded long-term,
Yeah.
right? And it has to be long-term because these issues are not going away. And, the idea that it's touching and supporting multiple town-based organizations, not just one, is very attractive to me and I think has legs. Because in the end, the money sounds nice, but it's really not that much money. So we're going to have to do something else if we really want to have an impact. This, when I look at this money, this is coordinator money. This is not we're going to change lives money, but the coordinator gathering the resources may be in future grants, then we may be able to change lives, right?
right.
From a
That
bigger
person
picture.
is the bridge for the community.
Right, so.
Okay,
I
you're
like that.
struggling, let me connect you here. I know there's resources here, but I think that's what I struggle with more about, we'll get all these, and we'll have piecemeal programs,
Yeah.
and they may be beneficial, but I think as a community member, I'd like to know, who is it that I can go to if I am struggling and I need help quickly? And you're not going to get that by piecemealing programs. I don't believe that you will. And people won't feel safe and comfortable doing that. But if we can identify a person in the community, like if the town hires a social worker, and the social worker doesn't have to work 40 hours a week, the social worker can work 24 hours a week or 30 hours a week, right? So that that person's available in the town, that person's a resource for the school department, although the school department has people,
We have people, but
but the families.
we have people, but we certainly could use the help. Like I'm saying, right? I mean, just the attendance issues alone are crazy, and there's people that need more coordinated services.
What if, with attention to both the process and this goal, and now a clearer sense of the limited funds that we have, if you sort of break it down into an annual basis, and also attention to the question of like, well, who's going to manage that, or how, if we refine the RFP, really sharpen it, there can be some openness in it for other ideas, but also say, we're looking for this. And then it's sort of like, what town departments are going to respond, or, what entities are going to say, yes, we'll do it, or, here's our version of that. At the same time, certainly if we have ideas, people can suggest, well, what about you guys get together and apply, or, like, there's ways to help those connections happen. But I think we can also draw some things to respond to, saying, we want, here's one thing we really think we want. What do you got? And we'll entertain other ideas, but this is our, a top priority,
Yeah,
rather than kind of coming up with the whole plan ourselves. Sorry. That's all.
I think there are probably three entities in town that have externally facing people that work with individuals on a variety of issues. You've got the police, and in terms of the community policing models and the program that they used to have. You look at the schools in terms of school adjustment counselors, and how much of that is family-oriented type social work. Then you have the community health nurse. Granted, that's a much limited thing because it's a small department, but it is a outward-facing thing around a healthcare issue. And so each of these types of functions can be, because you have the supervision and you have the goals embedded in those departments to make sure that whoever they hire, or whoever they delegate or designate could be, is doing their job and meeting the objectives of this grant.
Are you talking about a social worker, or are you talking about?
Well, you've been talking about a social worker.
Yeah, okay, I just, because you were talking about the different departments, and I thought you were talking about each individual
Well,
department.
but I'm taking the broad view of social work. I'm not taking the narrow view of an MSW, blah, 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 blah. I'm talking, you could have a school adjustment counselor type role, which they do social work. You have public health nurse, they do a form of social work, if they do it right. And
Sorry, go ahead.
and then the police, community policing, same thing. I don't know whether we work on a community policing model. It's been years since I've dealt with that, but it is the same type of thing.
I sort of understood what you're saying as thinking structurally about who could potentially apply together because they have people, some kind of structure for supervision.
Right.
And
Right.
Grant
someone who
management,
would
yeah.
do this kind of work.
Doesn't mean it's that person, or that, it's just that that's a function that they provide, or they would like to provide more of. I'm sure the police wanted to make up that position they lost, that we were sort of impressed by.
Right, and we were trying to, well, they had a letter of agreement with the FAST team to fill some of that void, and now the FAST team has lost their funding, so they cannot service Westport. So they had a plan, and it wasn't gonna cost anything because they had funding to come to Westport. We were in their catchment area, but they lost funding, so we lost that. So that's one of the things that I know that Chief Dunn and Detective Donovan have been trying to work on. How do we replace this thing that we've lost, or how do we create something that we've lost to meet that need? So they couldn't be here tonight, but I did tell them that that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. And so we're still back at, though, the initial thing is, do we contract initially for a consult to manage, whether it's managing the fund or managing whatever proposals come in? And then again, how much time would we want that person to spend? So again, it could be an intermunicipal with Dartmouth where the person that's there, Rachel, would just pick up a few hours so she could manage that part. And she wouldn't do anything else initially. So that we can at least get the RFP out, so it can get started, and then we can figure out what we're gonna do after that.
That's fine.
But I mean, the thing that Chris said was, he thinks we should have somebody to manage that piece, that administrative piece of it. And that he thinks he can get Dartmouth to do an intermunicipal contract. So do we go that route, and then what do we want? How many hours do we think we need? Do we need 10 hours a week? Do we need 5 hours a week initially?
So,
But
it's
I
so
think-
hard for us to know.
I think we start low, and then if she finds she needs more hours, then she can present that to us. Is this Rachel, is she full-time for Dartmouth?
She's full-time for Dartmouth, but the way it's structured is their grant, and that's what we have to watch out for. So their grant covers, I believe, 80% of her salary. And then the town picks up the other 20 or 10, it's like 90 and 10. So whatever we use, it would have to be within that 10%. We really couldn't use her a lot, because we can't give grant money, we can't support another grant program that's supported by the same grant.
Cross.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Double dip.
But Dartmouth is paying a percentage of her salary. So would Dartmouth be willing to share her,
And we pay the 10%.
and we pay the town for however many hours? Say we start off with 5 hours, 5 hours a week. And then I can work with her and say, I need you to do this for me, I need you to do this for me, I need you to do this for me.
Here, maybe set up the skeletons of the program.
The what?
Skeleton.
Bones.
Oh, okay.
Like, let's start
Yeah.
at this and assess. I mean, I guess I would think a couple things. One, it sounds pretty clearly, or at least certainly I think, based on our discussions tonight and looking at the budget, et cetera, separate out the administrative function and kind of minimize the expense of that, if you will.
Right.
And use the grant to address the larger goals
The-
around
The therapeutic,
the therapeutic and outreach engagement goals.
yeah.
I wouldn't spend more than 10% of our annual quote-unquote budget, even though, using 98, that, maybe more, maybe it's more this year to get it set up. So I would, again, consider
But
that.
we get, are you talking about how much we get a year?
I'm averaging it out, because it varies by year, so I'm using the 98,400. I wouldn't spend more than 10% of that on the administrative
All right,
contract.
so $9,000.
Except maybe if there's first-year startup costs.
Which should be fine.
I think that outsourcing it is a good idea, and I think since it's going to be cyclical, I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think you can hire them on a regular basis. It's going to have to be when there's work. They can submit billable hours. I think that would be the proper arrangement, much like someone who does bookkeeping for a business.
Except there may be some point at which it's sort of the office hours idea. But we could sort of sort that out and negotiate it, maybe getting more information on the hourly rate
I
and.
mean, they would take calls from the public.
Yeah, so that we
Field
have.
questions, because you don't
Exactly,
want them to come to the committee.
right,
So,
right. The way Craig described it works
So-
for the trust.
So I'm going to ask, do people feel comfortable voting on spending no more than $9,800 on administrative costs? I want to say in a fiscal year, because it'll be a fiscal year, because it starts back in July, so per fiscal year. And then we figure out who is going to be doing this and what we need them to do. But I think we need to vote on a set amount and then work from there. And I can let Chris know that the committee has decided this, we're not spending more than this on administrative. So it's management of the project manager, because we also have other administrative costs, which are still under the $5,000 that I have.
But then I would
Or the
calculate,
4,000 that's
roll
left.
that into the 10%. And if that's true, then that reduces the amount you want to spend on the project manager, unless we want to spend more than 10% on administrative costs.
I just think, yeah, I think we just need to set a limit that we won't spend more than this.
On both the project manager and other administrative costs. Because basically, it's what we grant and any administrative costs.
What are we paying in administrative costs now?
What are we paying for administrative costs now?
Yeah,
It's right there.
And some supplies that we've bought and
We've
things.
bought, yeah, we've had some supplies, mailings.
so I would take the administrative costs that we're now covering and then add the 10% to it.
Okay.
Oh,
So
all right.
So that uncovers some,
Yeah,
yeah.
'cause you're getting a net addition of effort, because if we're trying to do backfilling, it doesn't make sense.
At $50 an hour, that's only 200 hours a year. It's not very much.
How much an hour?
Oh, $50 an hour. That's low.
It is low.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, I think part of the question would be, I mean, I guess giving it to Chris, and then how does that fit with their kind of?
Well, this is our recommendation. Don't forget, it's not our decision.
True.
But if, it would be good to know what Dartmouth, if we were to buy services from Dartmouth, what is their rate?
Right, what are they currently paying?
Not, yeah, what is it cost? If you know, what, since Chris had his trot on this one, okay, what's the rate? Committee can't make a recommendation unless we
Right.
know what the rate is, unless we can visualize what the output is.
And we're basically looking at no more than $10,000 perhaps a year on administrative costs.
I mean, it depends if you, that's 10%. Depends if you want to say that's for the project manager, if you want to add a little bit on for other expenses. I think that's the question, what are we spending annually?
Okay.
So, but I would,
Administratively, I mean, we really have not spent a lot of money.
yeah,
So,
But once we get things going,
yeah, once we do. it'll be
you'll
different.
generate more administrative expense. People are gonna be, you know, if you've got somebody that's doing community outreach, they're gonna have mileage, they're gonna have supplies,
but that would go, if it's outreach, that would go into the grant.
yes,
That would be part of their grant proposal budget.
right.
So I think for this, it's just what was the committee spend and what
Administratively.
and are there things like that for the person who's doing the administrative work?
Yeah, well, I thought part of, if we were looking at a contract with Dartmouth, it's a very short-term thing, maybe longer term. That's to set up the procurement process and the prioritization, and to learn from their expertise.
Oh, I don't think we were looking for expertise, just administration.
Right, but that's their
Yeah.
expertise, because they didn't know the requirements of the,
They'd know the requirements, they'd like read through the proposals, kind of
Yeah.
prepare them
yeah.
for us, set up the contract.
And we're not training someone to do that.
Right.
So, yeah, there is some expertise.
Yeah.
I don't think they need to be expert in our priorities.
No,
But
Well-
in the process,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I believe that if we do an intermunicipal with Dartmouth, that Rachel is doing that. And so she knows how to do the report and keep track of the funds. And I don't know about,
that makes
I don't know
sense.
how many projects they may or may not be working on. She's hired to do everything. So I don't know if they're doing any proposals because they hired her.
And I have here, because I had spoken to Dolores a time back, and I have here that her salary is $60,000 a year. So the town's paying
That was-
10% of that.
I thought it was more than that, but anyway,
Maybe
I
it
don't
went
think we
up.
have to worry about, I think what we have to worry about is what are we willing, what is our recommendation? Because again, it's not our decision, it's our recommendation that the select board pay for so many hours of administrative costs, and and we have a limit, we don't want it to be more than 10% of what we expect to expend every year, which is maybe 90. Well, we'd have that, it's different, because if we were going to go tier 3, it's different.
But I would say, I would use the 98 as a kind of placeholder
Yeah.
for
And I would
this
still-
question.
I would throw and say, what is it gonna cost? We're gonna, for the interim process, we like your recommendation, Chris. What's the cost?
Okay.
And not, we're not talking about the whole thing, we're talking about to manage the transition, and rather than trying to start from ground zero, in terms of external resources, we're going to, so what, should we with you, a group of, part of this committee, and Chris meet with Dartmouth, let him tell us how to do it.
Well, what he said to me was he wants to know how many hours we would want. That's what he needs to know, so then he can get the other information.
That's sort of what we don't know. We know the
I
money,
feel
but not
like
the
Rachel
hours.
might know about how many hours
That was my
we
point.
might require.
She's
for-
doing it now, and we say, oh, this is what we're looking for, and she's gonna say, oh, well, that'll take blah, blah, blah. And then you can talk to Chris about the intermunicipal agreement.
Okay. All right, so I have another job to do. So I will contact Rachel and talk with her
Yeah.
and see if I can get more definite information. But as the committee in agreement, do I need to take a motion and a vote on hiring somebody to manage the administrative and whether it's a project manager or an administrative manager, but that we need to have a vote so I can then move forward with it? So is there a motion for something?
I'm trying to capture this.
Look at somebody wiser than me to make that motion.
There's nobody wiser than you, Craig. That's why you're on the committee.
You're the one with the most experience.
Well, not necessarily.
Are we in
It's a pretty
agreement?
experienced committee, I
Okay.
mean, that,
So a motion to hire,
explore an
And there you go.
to explore an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Dartmouth to talk about setting up the administrative structure to support program funding through the OSAP grant.
okay. Is that clear? Did you get that,
Not
Bob?
OSAP, whatever it is. OSAP's
Do you
an
think
old
it would be helpful to have Rachel come speak at one of our meetings?
I can certainly do that, but,
We just delayed it another month.
yeah,
Yeah.
we got to get moving. If we want to get an RFP posted, then we need to have the administrative piece in place.
Yeah.
And so part of what happens is Chris gets his information, then he has to present it to the select board, and the select board has to vote for it, and then he can proceed from there. So, so we need to move. So did you get that, Bob? Could you repeat it back?
To explore an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Dartmouth for provision of administrative services for opioid settlement fund.
Perfect.
He's wonderful. So do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Yeah, I know, right? We did it. We're moving something. Okay. All right, so on that, I'm going to move to the fact that I'm attending now, and anybody can attend. It doesn't have to be me. The Greater New Bedford Opioid Task Force meets the third Thursday of every month at 1 o'clock. And it's usually at Buttonwood Park. And they have, at Buttonwood Park, at where the,
Community center.
yeah, the community center is.
Oh, yes,
Like
yes.
the warming center.
Yes.
Used to
Yes.
be.
The snack bar, the little trinket
Yeah.
store.
So I will get the exact, I don't know, the logistics about parking and all of that stuff, but it's at 1 o'clock. And I went, the last one was a Zoom because of the snow. And there's so many people there, and there's so many great things that are happening with the use of the funds. And in fact, some of those people were at the meeting, at the conference today. So So again, I encourage everyone to go. They're great connections and a lot of good energy, positive energy.
Can you repeat again the title of the group?
It's the Greater New Bedford Opioid Task Force. Okay. And another meeting I had on February 26th was with Representative Allison Gittens Dias from RISE and the attorney Cheryl Sabara from Mass Association of Health Boards. So, and what's great is I now have the connection with Ally or Allison. She's already sent me another email to find out what I need, what kind of support we need. She sent me she sent me two RFPs from two other areas because I told her I'm trying to do this. So she sent me two RFPs, but one of them's from Plymouth, and that's the one you pulled from, right? Yeah. So, and Plymouth is a whole another animal. But it was very helpful, and Cheryl Sababer she's great, and she said she was going to talk to Matt about a couple of things, and it had to do with Olive and whether or not Olive could be in the picture. So anyway, so those are some of the meetings I have had, and I think that's all I have to report. How about you, Pam?
I'll tell you about the meetings. I just have one question.
Yeah.
Would you like me to go to the meeting this Thursday and take notes?
You can go, I'm going to
Oh,
go.
you're gonna go too?
I'm going to
Okay.
go, because I'm
I was
trying to.
help get something off your plate.
No, I want everybody to go so you can get the energy from, this group and what they're doing. Part of the reason why I'm going is networking and being the forward face. I'm in Westport and we need help. Do you have any ideas? So I'm trying to be this presence representing Westport.
You're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you so much, Fran. So rather than just make phone calls, and send emails, I want them to see me and connect with me and say, oh, Donna might be interested in this. And so anyway, but I also want to make sure that everybody knows you can go. All right, so,
And when it's going to be?
I'm sorry?
Wh-
It's the third Thursday
So this
of
Thursday.
every month, so it's this Thursday at 1:00. And people that are there, like the Reverend in New Bedford, Lima,
David Levy, yeah.
David Lima, he's there.
Carl Alves.
There, Carl Alves, yes, Carl Alves was the one who organized this with a couple of other agencies. I don't remember what other agencies.
Actually, Carl.
Oh, is he? Yeah, I've known him for quite a while now, because he still works for PACA, but I had nursing students at PACA, and that's how I got to know Carl. Okay, so Pam, do you want to report on?
Sure. So I was able to attend the meeting, the new NA meeting that's now on Wednesday evenings at the Grange. They unfortunately were not able to allow me to speak to the group because they only allow people, their group to speak, the people that are struggling with addiction. But I did connect with Julie, and she was really wonderful, and we talked afterwards. And I was able to ask her, first of all, she's from Tiverton. There were 16 people at the meeting. They all seem to know each other, but Julie thinks that none of them are from Westport. In fact, 2 came all the way from Onset to come to this meeting. So it was a very good meeting. And Julie, when I did ask her, now Julie's been in recovery for 21 years, but I did ask her what were her challenges, and if we were to ask her how we could have helped her back in the day. She said absolutely needed help in sober living, payment for sober living, because when you first go in, you don't have a job. Right now, the average, as far as I know, is around $800 a month that they charge for a shared bedroom. So the sober living was one of her biggest challenges, finding transportation to her meetings. And then eventually, when she did get a job, she was struggling to purchase the proper clothing for her to go to work. And that was about it from Julie. She
Is it
said,
an open meeting? Then
it's an open meeting, but guests are not allowed to speak unless you're struggling with
Okay.
addiction there. And then I did get through to Jen Ferrera from Star. I could feel kind of her kind of attitude towards not really having time to do another survey. She was very, very busy. She actually said, I really don't feel that another survey will be that impactful from the people, and
What does
she.
she mean another?
Well, maybe I slipped that word in, but
Oh,
we've done
oh,
a
okay.
lot of surveys.
Oh.
You know, she hasn't done.
Yeah, I was
No,
gonna
no,
say, 'cause
don't-
they didn't-
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But she referred me to that Stephanie Barboza, who came to speak here, who's very interested in, you know, talking to us again about some ideas, because she was also funded by the CARA program, and she does the training programs for stigma and harm reduction. And she works a lot with the fire and police. But anyway, she said, if you know, anytime you want me to come speak again, she lost her grant. So she may be one of the people
Slammed.
that
Yeah.
might apply. So that's about all I have.
Bummer.
Okay. All right, so anybody else have any updates? I know that, Fran, you said you had
Oh, yes.
updated.
Yes, the survey. So I took your survey that we originally did. I'm going to send it out to families. All I did was just update the beginning of it, just to explain a little bit about where the money's coming from, what the purpose is. But I can get that out this week to families if you're good with it.
Okay.
I'll reshare it.
I'm sure it's fine, I'd like to see it, but I would say,
I thought I attached it.
you know, to go for it so we can get,
Yeah,
hopefully
it's the
get some
same
more
survey, it's
data.
just introducing it a little bit more, like a little bit
Yeah,
softer
a little
launch.
bit, and also for the, you know, to
For the
connect with
families,
parents.
right, and yeah.
So we're pretty much going to focus on the parents, but not the kids.
Oh, I can do the kids, let me just do the parents first.
Okay.
Right, let me do that, because then if I do the kids, I'm gonna need permission most likely, because it's a sensitive topic, and,
Yeah.
you know, let's just start with this one, but,
Can we give it to the staff too?
yeah, absolutely, that's a great idea. I can send it out
All the teachers.
to our adults.
Okay.
They'll fill out for us, and then I can send out another one thanking them for those who filled it out, and then we can do the opt-out letter for parents if they don't want their kid to
Okay.
participate. Okay,
Okay.
yep,
Thank you.
And think I'm having a meeting with the adjustment counselors with the kids who are doing, they have something called the Hope Squad.
yes.
And the Hope Squad is a way to connect with other kids and help other kids who might be in trouble or struggling. And so that's another avenue, and to address addiction within the school system and other mental health issues. Okay. Anyone else have any other things to share?
No, nothing new, except just a reminder to all of us, we still have an open seat on the
Thank you.
committee for someone with lived experience. And I was hoping that partnering with STAR around a survey would help us, you know, do that. And maybe if we don't do a survey, we can shift gears to just asking if they can, you know, share that request or invitation.
I might have had a name of somebody at one point that, but I can't remember if they actually lived in Westport, though. Might have been from Little Concord. So they have to be a Westport resident.
I think they should, to be on this committee, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that.
Just a reminder for.
Thanks for that
being on this.
reminder. When I was talking with the attorney from the Mass Association of Public Health Departments, she said, gave all these suggestions, and I said that we had Pam on the community, and she goes, well, if that's not lived experience, I don't know what is.
Oh, that's good.
So we do have somebody with lived experience. And,
I'll find one. I might be
well,
able to find someone.
but certainly being the parent of someone who has died from an overdose, and that is certainly a lived experience I would never want to have, but it is a lived experience. So we're happy that you're here with us.
Glad to be here. Hope I can be helpful.
All right, so Committee planning, next steps. I know I need to contact Rachel and talk a little bit about her, about what she would think would be necessary to do just administrative work on our opioid settlement funds. Fran, you're going to send out the survey. What else do we need to do moving forward?
I need to connect with Fran about using AI to
Yes.
sort all the data I gathered. So that's still outstanding.
Yeah, we can even just
Yeah.
Zoom one day or something if you need to, at work. Might be easier, yeah.
And I'm also, I got to continue working on the RFP or RFA to make it more comfortable. I'll continue to work with Chris Vitale on it. I'll make the changes, I'll send it back to him, and we'll keep working on it.
You know, the one thing that would be good for maybe a couple people to work on is if we refine, or maybe we need to talk more, I'm not sure, but we talked today about something to potentially prioritize in the RFP. If we agree on that, then we should draft some language, because I don't think that's clearly in the RFP in the way we were talking about it today.
Okay, maybe if we have time, you and I could
Yeah.
meet and talk
Yeah.
some about that.
After
So we
this
can,
Saturday, I'm going to have a little sanity.
okay, okay. I don't know when mine's going to come
Look,
back.
I'm
but
not going to
that's-
call it sanity, but
I think
Yeah.
one thing that I would like to see us think about also that we haven't mentioned yet is like, do we need to decide like what % of the money we think should go towards prevention, education, treatment?
right, we have so
You know.
little, you know, I would almost say that we sort of, it's more like rather than a percentage, it's like, what are the top priorities, you know? And that's probably, we need to assess that every year, really.
Yeah, but we already have assessed some top priorities. I mean,
Yeah.
in the survey.
Through the
and
surveys, yeah.
For sure.
The focus group. You're going to, Farron's going to distribute this survey, so we'll get some more input. But I will say, on the focus group and our survey, some of the top ones, and maybe it was the population, but the population we had in the focus group was not kids, and doesn't look like parents of kids, it was adults and some older adults, talked about kids. And so, and again, the conference I went to today, if we're going into topics not reasonably anticipated, but the conference I went to today, there was a lot of law enforcement, and they were all federal. They'd been in Mexico. They talked about the cartels. They talked about the distribution. They talked about what's in a lot of these press pills, and only 3 to 5% is fentanyl. The rest is all filler, and they're filling it with all kinds of crap. A lot of tranquilizers and a lot of stuff that fentanyl doesn't work on. So, but one of the things that one of the speakers said that really struck with me, he says, they're targeting our kids. They're targeting not just college, they're targeting high school. And how they're going about targeting is another question, but he said they're really focusing in on the younger kids because they get them addicted earlier.
Yeah, boom,
and
right,
that's their-
addicted, yeah.
So that idea of percentages, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Because it depends on, again, more survey results, we have an idea. And if we decide to go a route of having a person in Westport versus contracting, doing proposals from different organizations. But the first thing is getting the administrative piece nailed down. So that's what my priority will be from now until the next meeting. And that's that. Any other things that we need to be planning and next steps for us? Okay.
Next meeting?
Steady on, yeah. So the next meeting is April 21st. And if there's no other business, I take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.